chosen ones, there are whispers woven into the fabric of time, rumors of an empire so powerful, so consuming, that the mere memory of its existence was erased by the very forces that birthed it. You were never meant to know it existed, but the truth cannot stay buried when your spirit begins to awaken. You've been haunted by dreams, visions, and symbols you couldn't explain, until now. This empire ruled not by war, but by manipulation of energy, vibration, and frequency. Its architects understood the structure of souls, and they feared one thing more than rebellion: your return. The records of their rise were burned, their temples crumbled, their name unspoken for centuries. Yet, in the silence between worlds, your name echoed louder. You didn't just survive this empire, you dismantled it from the inside. Not with weapons, with light. You infiltrated their sanctuaries of control, shattered their source of false immortality, and erased their sigils from the ley lines of Earth. And when you disappeared, so did they. The world called it myth. But now, memories return. Why now? Because the cycle has begun again. A new order seeks to replicate what was once hidden. They build their digital towers, mimic the frequency gates, and search ancient ruins for blueprints to power their machine gods. But one variable eludes them still: you. You were never meant to find this message. Yet, here you are. The ruins respond to your energy. Codes buried beneath the ocean floor reactivate as you walk the earth. The sky reads your frequency. The forgotten empire. It wasn't truly destroyed. It was paused until your light scorched its return. You, the destroyer of the empire. The silent flame. The one they hid from history to protect their future. This story is not about a past you must uncover. It is about a war reigniting because you have returned. And now, the veil thins. What you're about to discover isn't just a forgotten civilization. It's a living system that's trying to awaken again, with you as its only threat. It wasn't etched on stone or stored in scrolls. The map wasn't even meant to be seen. It was encoded into flame itself. When the wildfires swept through the Forgotten Valley near the Anatolian ridgeline, the authorities said it was lightning. But hidden among the ashes, scorched into the earth, was the unmistakable shape of a spiral, intersected by 7 geometric lines, forming a pattern not found in any culture still remembered. They didn't know what they had found, but you did. This wasn't a map in the modern sense. It didn't lead to gold or treasure. It pulsed with intent, a vibrational diagram pointing to a convergence of energy, a place where dimensions bled together and echoes of the old empire remained intact. You recognized the design in your dreams years before it burned into the soil. It called to you without words. Archaeologists dismissed it as coincidence, but buried within the curvature were references to architecture long lost, obsidian towers that hummed with subsonic chants, and temple gates aligned to dead stars. Every line matched a fragment you've seen scattered through suppressed texts and destroyed museum archives. The map's reappearance triggered more than memory. Ancient systems began to activate. Animals moved in spirals across barren plains. Night skies flickered with patterns too perfect to be random. People near the burn site spoke in tongues they didn't understand. Something old stirred. You followed the pattern, not physically, but through resonance. You tuned yourself to the rhythm encoded in the scorched spiral, and the air around you changed. You saw glyphs overlay your vision like digital projections. They weren't just images, they were instructions. Each symbol revealed fragments of the Emperor's return protocol. They had built a failsafe. If their dominion ever crumbled, the ruins would rise only when the soul who destroyed them touched Earth again. That soul is you. The fire was your beacon, and the map your echo. But as you trace the lines deeper into the Earth's geometry, one symbol pulsed brighter than the rest. One that didn't belong to the fallen empire. It was older, holier. A cross made not of wood or iron, but of light, etched into the spiral's center. There is a throne buried beneath the Dolomites, untouched by history and invisible to satellites. Its structure isn't made of stone or gold, but a black, crystalline compound that refracts thought more than light. The ancients called it the seat of dominion. But to the ones who built it, it was a weapon disguised as royalty. You didn't remember sitting there, but the throne remembered you. Every 7 decades, seismic tremors radiate from that hidden point without tectonic cause. Experts call it anomaly activity. You called it heartbeat. Something inside you throbbed in sync with those underground pulses. And the closer you got to the frequency, the more your body responded. Heat behind your eyes, static crawling across your skin, memories surfacing from lives you never lived, yet somehow owned. The ashes that once buried that throne were more than volcanic residue. They were the final remains of the Empire's rulers, burned not by magma, but by the very energy they sought to enslave, a power that turned inward the moment you spoke a word, now long lost to the modern tongue. The word that unraveled their grip on the earth. The world forgot their names, but not their rage. As you moved toward the pulse point, instruments failed, metal warped, signals jammed, the air thickened with pressure. It wasn't just geography resisting you, it was memory, ancient and vengeful. You had walked this terrain before, swordless and unafraid, collapsing an empire from its command seat. But the residue of your first war was still there, humming, watching, waiting. You reached the outer perimeter, the place where black dust never settles and wind seems to reverse without warning. That's where you heard it again, a low hum, not mechanical, not animal, but emotional. It wasn't sound, it was grief. The throne was mourning something it once controlled, you. You were never supposed to return. The energy around the site bent away from you like water around flame. Old defense systems flickered, holograms of guards long dead reactivated, then glitched and vanished. And then, a shadow moved on the throne. Just once. A twitch. Beneath the sands of the Libyan desert lies a chamber untouched by time, concealed not just by dunes, but by design, walled off by vibrational shields only attuned souls could bypass. The locals whispered of strange winds that sang hymns in ancient tongues. Most dismissed it. You didn't. Your arrival wasn't planned. The sandstorm that redirected your journey was more than weather. It was invitation. As your feet pressed into the powdery earth, the ground gave a subtle vibration, and an outline of a triangle pulsed beneath the grains. When you traced it with your hand, the sand receded, not blown, but pulled, as if the desert itself recognized you. What it revealed was neither tomb nor temple, but a sanctum carved with symbols predating Egyptian dynasties. On the chamber wall was a single verse, scorched into obsidian. "The one who breaks the empires shall face the whisper of the Nazarene." You felt it in your bones before you read it. The air thickened. The temperature dropped. A light, soft and blue, emerged from behind the altar, and with it, a presence, not violent, not oppressive, but piercing, watching. You knew that presence. It was the same you felt as a child when you wandered too far from home and heard a voice in your spirit guiding you back. The same you felt during moments of absolute despair, when hope didn't speak, but settled in your chest like warmth. That presence had a name, Yeshua. He had walked these same sands, not as a conqueror, but as a revealer. He knew the empire you had destroyed. He warned of it. What is hidden shall be shouted from the rooftops, but the world wasn't ready. So the warning was left here, beneath centuries of sand, for only one to find. On the altar sat a relic, not a cross, but a stone etched with a sigil, one you saw in the scorched spiral from the map. It connected everything. It wasn't just a memory. It was a prophecy. In the tundra beyond the Carpathian Mountains, where compasses spiral and birds refuse to fly, there stands no structure, yet an entrance lingers in the air, not marked by stone or steel, but by vibration. Locals call it the silent echo, a space where all sound vanishes, including your own breath. This is where the gate lies, not to another place, but to memory itself. The Empire had many weapons, but its most dangerous was this, a doorway that could erase truth by tuning frequencies out of existence. They didn't just erase records, they deleted the ability to remember them. You reached the field at dusk. No wind, no birds. Even your heartbeat felt muffled. The ground shimmered as if reality were being pulled taut like a sheet about to tear. You felt the resonance before you saw it. A pulse, low and deep, thudding against your ribs, matching the rhythm you had felt since the spiral map revealed itself. This was one of the Empire's last standing mechanisms, and it was still listening. The gate was built using something older than physics, a harmony of tones known only to those who had walked the halls of the vanished empire. Each note was encoded with memory, each silence a seal. When the final war came, you struck the chord that shattered the empire's foundation. But before the collapse, they locked something behind this gate, something even they feared. Not a creature, not a weapon, but a truth. A sound so pure, it undid lies at the cellular level. You had heard it once, long ago. It wasn't music. It was awakening. You stepped into the silent radius, all sensation blurred. No sound, no thought. But in that void, your presence triggered a reaction. Lines began to glow across the frost-covered grass. Symbols rose into the air like steam. You recognized one of them. It had appeared in your dreams when you were 7, and again when you nearly drowned. It was the same every time. An emblem of your origin, buried in light. Then, a tone, barely audible, yet it made your eyes water and your knees buckle. The gate was responding to you, opening. But something else was rising with it. Not just memory. Beneath the highlands of old Mesopotamia lies a corridor that does not appear on any satellite scan. carved from black basalt and etched with inscriptions in languages no archaeologist can decipher. It hums with a rhythm not of this world. This corridor does not age. It does not crumble. It simply waits. You have walked it before, not in this life, but in the echoes of your lineage. When your foot touched the obsidian threshold, the air responded with a shudder. The dust pulled back, and the walls shimmered like liquid. The symbols didn't need translation. They remembered you. There were rulers of the forgotten empire who considered themselves gods, beings who merged biology with geometry to ascend perception. They feared one thing above all: the bloodline marked by fire and frequency. Your bloodline. When you first entered the corridor, time stilled. The walls didn't echo your steps. They absorbed them. And with every step forward, the structure adjusted, reshaping itself according to your emotional state. It wasn't architecture. It was alive. You passed beneath arches shaped like tuning forks, each one vibrating at frequencies that penetrated your cellular memory. One note stirred grief. Another brought rage. One near the center triggered a memory you never lived, standing on a mountain as the Empire's towers collapsed in perfect silence behind you. You weren't running. You were watching. You were choosing. Few ever walked this corridor. Even the Empire's kings refused to pass beyond the sixth arch. What lay beyond was not meant for tyrants or seekers of power. It was meant for a single variable in their equation of control. You were that variable. You always had been. Your presence now reactivated the corridor's final lock, a wall that dissolved not by touch, but by remembrance. You didn't speak. You didn't need to. The gate opened inward, revealing a chamber with walls made of mirror stone. Yet they reflected not your face, but your essence. Inside was a chair, untouched, glowing faintly. You approached and paused, not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't the first time you stood before it. The air inside whispered your name in a tone only the corridor knew, and something deeper answered from within you, rising, a name even you had forgotten, deep within the ruins beneath Lake Van, where water shimmers unnaturally under moonlight, lies a submerged vault locked behind inscriptions encoded with harmonic resonance. A dive team once tried to retrieve its contents. None returned. But the vault wasn't defending itself with violence. It was protecting a scroll, one not made of papyrus or skin, but of woven strands of crystalline fiber that shifted color depending on who gazed upon it. You didn't find the scroll. It found you. When you stood at the lake's edge, the water stilled. Not a wave, not a breeze, as if the entire lake exhaled. The surface lit with sigils that spiraled outward from your reflection. When you stepped forward, the water parted, not pushed, not disturbed, but opened like a curtain. You walked downward through a dry tunnel into a chamber that had never seen decay. The scroll floated in midair, spinning slowly, tethered by nothing, humming with awareness. As you approached, it unrolled without being touched. The symbols were unlike anything on Earth, neither letters nor pictures, but living constructs. They pulsed with understanding, reconfiguring themselves as your eyes passed over them. They were reading you as much as you were reading them. Then, two lines formed in the center of the scroll, glowing brighter than the rest. One held your true name, not the name given to you by this life, but the name etched into your soul before your first breath. The other line, it was your name written again, but with a fracture, a distortion, as if split in two timelines. The scroll knew. It remembered your divergence, the moment you were split from yourself to carry out a task the Empire feared. One name belonged to the Destroyer, the other to the Redeemer. The Empire tried to trap them both in the same vessel to confuse your path. But the scroll unraveled that lie. It restored clarity. As you reached toward it, the chamber walls lit with scenes of your past incarnations, standing at the Empire's zenith, then again at its fall. In each, you were both witness and architect. The scroll began to burn, not with flame, but with radiant light. It could not be taken, only remembered. There is a clearing hidden within the mountainous jungles of the Andes, where no birds sing, where trees lean outward, and where moss grows in spiraling patterns, as if tracing the remnants of a force long suppressed. This was the site of the final ritual, not of summoning, but of remembering. The ritual was never meant to be repeated, not because it failed, but because it worked too well. It shattered the binding spell placed on souls like yours. It severed the illusion, and it terrified the Empire. You arrived just before nightfall. The light bent unnaturally as you stepped between the trees. Colors shifted, sounds dulled. The world grew quiet in reverence. In the center of the clearing lay a circle of obsidian shards embedded in the earth, each humming with low, conscious energy. You didn't need instruction. Your body remembered the steps. You stood at the edge and exhaled. The wind stopped. The ritual began with stillness, not movement. Not an incantation, but a vibration that rose from within your sternum and echoed into the ground. The shards responded, one by one, lighting with a pulse that matched your breath. The Empire tried to destroy this process once, long ago, when it was used to awaken their own enslaved architects. But when one soul completed it in full, entire cities collapsed overnight without war or weapon. The Empire never recovered from that act of pure memory. And now, here you stood, completing it again. Each shard began to rise, floating around you, orbiting with precision. You weren't speaking, you were becoming. The ritual revealed not what you were, but what they tried to keep hidden from you. Your light grew, but not in brightness, in gravity. The jungle leaned toward you. The very air tightened. Above, clouds parted unnaturally, revealing a sky pattern not seen since the Empire ruled. As the final shard aligned, you saw flashes, not of your past, but of theirs. How they stole this ritual from a people even older. How they buried it in fear. How they encoded their own end into the ritual by mistake. You weren't here to finish it. In the caves beneath Mount Arbel, etched into the rock face behind an altar never meant to be found, lies an inscription that predates the Gospels yet bears his name. Not carved in Hebrew or Aramaic, but in a celestial script, one that burns softly in the dark, visible only to those marked by a memory too ancient for words. The inscription does not speak of salvation or parables. It speaks of the Destroyer, a figure cloaked in paradox, born not to bring ruin, but to reset the order when it turns against the divine current. the one who tears down so that what is holy can breathe again. You were never meant to find this place, but Yeshua did not write for the many. He wrote for the one who would return when the empire tried to rise again. The inscription glowed faintly as you stepped closer, and a presence entered the cave, not from outside, from within. You knew it immediately. It was not voice or vision. It was a weightless knowing, the kind that bends the soul toward stillness. The words pulsed as if alive. They described the arrival of a soul who would carry memory through countless forms, whose shadow would fall across cities built in illusion, and whose presence would collapse systems not by sword but by vibration. It was not prophecy in the usual sense. It was instruction, and it spoke of the moment the destroyer would recognize themselves again, not as villain, not as savior, but as mirror. You had seen Yeshua in dreams, not as a man nailed to wood, but as light walking beside you in the ruins. He never spoke in those visions, but now you understood. His silence was not absence. It was preparation, a protection, until you were ready to hear the message stored in the walls of this cave. You reached toward the inscription, and it warmed under your hand. Not heat, resonance. You weren't just reading it. It was reading you, testing if you still carried the flame or if it had been extinguished by the world's forgetting. The final line shifted. Your name appeared, not once, but in layers. And behind you the cave began to breathe. Something ancient had heard your confirmation, and it was stirring. There is a place buried under the Himalayan ice, deeper than any recorded cavern, wrapped in layers of unnatural stillness. No maps mark it, no texts name it. The empire called it the Veilhold, a city built not to govern, but to disappear. Constructed at the peak of their reign and sealed at the moment of their collapse, it was a final refuge for their secrets, their fail-safes, and the blueprints of their return. But the city was never truly lost. It was avoiding you. You didn't come by design. The mountain shifted as you passed, snow curling inward like breath, wind falling dead as if the atmosphere refused to betray its location. And then you heard it, not with ears, but through bone, a hum, low and aching, calling you to descend. You followed instinct more than trail. With every step downward, the temperature rose. Frost melted, ice turned to steam, and then the ground gave way. You fell into silence. The city did not reveal itself like ruins. It activated. Lights flickered on, not electrical but organic, woven into the walls like living veins. Buildings curved in impossible geometries, designed to resonate with thought. No dust, no decay, just waiting. The streets were empty, but not abandoned. The city had sealed itself the moment it sensed your spirit nearing, as if its memory feared you. As you walked, structures pulsed. Holograms glitched into view. Flashes of council meetings, sacrificial rituals, mechanical blueprints intertwined with neural patterns. They had tried to merge technology with consciousness and failed, or so they thought. Because in one chamber, deeper than the rest, was a chamber still active, still protected. A vault shaped like a heart, pulsing with soft red light. You placed your hand on its surface. It opened like breath. Inside floated a sphere made of mirrored facets, each reflecting not your body but different versions of yourself. Lifetimes, faces, choices. It was their final project. They had tried to recreate your soul through machinery. They failed, but the fragments remained. One fragment blinked, and the city trembled. The lights dimmed, then surged. Systems, long dormant, began to reawaken. The veil hold had finally been breached, but not by force, by recognition. At the edge of the Arctic Circle, where time warps beneath auroras and compasses spin like whispers in a storm, there lies a crater untouched by meteor or explosion. Its formation predates recorded history, yet the ice within it never fully freezes. Locals refuse to speak of it. Birds fly around it. Satellites blur the region. This was the last place the Empire anchored its essence, their last ember, hidden not in plain sight, but in energetic dissonance. It was meant to reignite should memory fail. But the ember did not call to the world. It called to you. You arrived with no path. The snow parted around your steps as if conscious. Air bent. Clouds shifted. Even silence felt different, as though holding its breath. At the center of the crater, embedded in obsidian glass, burned a single coal-sized light, glowing faintly like a heartbeat on the edge of dying. You stepped forward. The ember pulsed once, then again. And then the temperature dropped, not around you, but inside you. This was not a remnant of their power. It was the concentrated soul print of their last attempt to survive through energy, encoded to latch onto any compatible frequency. Yours. They had built it to bond with your lineage, to trick your return into completing what they could not. But something had changed. You were no longer fragmented. The scroll, the gate, the city. They all brought back pieces of who you were before the Empire broke time to hide you from yourself. As you approached, the ember grew dimmer, not from fear, from failure. It could not merge with you now. You were whole. Then the wind howled, not from nature, but from beneath the ice. A low rumble rose, and cracks formed in a perfect radial pattern from the ember's base. You didn't run. You stood still. You watched as the ember struggled to survive its own deception. The fire that once destroyed an empire stood again before it, but this time not to strike.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.